भेजा था। Very good morning and a warm welcome to the attendees of this webinar that we are doing on the budget 2023 and its impact on MSMEs. We would like to take the opportunity to thank the Union government primarily for bringing out the budget, which will definitely have an impact on a positive impact on MSMEs in India, and to discuss the implications and the repercussions, whether positive or negative. We have with us Mr. Mahesh Jaising, partner in Delloite, and we'd like to share him to share his experience and his perspective of the budget today. Thank you, Mr. Jaising. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me over. Much appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you. We are joined by quite a few people here, as I can see, and taking forward the discussion today. This is a quick chat so that we can conserve time of everybody. We all know that on the first hand, the presumptive taxation limit, which was earlier at 2 crore, has now been revamped and it is now changed to 3 crores. There will be certain implications in the long term for micro enterprises that have turnovers between 2 to 3 crores, because the new taxation scheme under which, most of us know this, that 8% of your turnover, if you are able to show 8% of your turnover as the gross profit, you will be able to go ahead, file the tax returns without having to keep any documents or without having to file any audit reports or anything of that sort. There's also a very important decision which has been taken by the Union government of primarily amending the Section 43B of the Income Tax Act, by which any payments delayed to MSMEs beyond the period of 45 days will now, all these payments will not be allowed as deductions in the first place. So all these payments will be disallowed if they are not made within 45 days. I'm very sure it is going to have a very substantial impact on, large corporates and even all entities which are registered with the MCA in terms of, paying their suppliers, which is micro or small or medium enterprises. So going forward, one of the things that has been put in place is a vast number of custom duties and exemptions have been changed in order to promote manufacturing in India. Now, right. I'd like to know from Mr. Jaising, that how do you think this is going to help micro, small, and medium enterprises who are into manufacturing?
No, I think, thank you. Before we go into the three subsets, one on the presumptive tax threshold, on the credit period of 45 days, and thereon the benefit for MSME on the working capital front, and then on the customs, what you will see as a common thread of the message and what the implications are is ease of doing business, focus for MSME, dealing with working capital challenges, and third, which I think is perhaps the most important, creating more opportunities for MSME to get into the manufacturing space. Let me start off with the manufacturing part, because the presumptive tax is the threshold. 2 crores has become 3 crores. Is it good? Yes, it's very good. And it will cut across all of the MSMEs who meet the criteria, which has certain threshold of amount of cash collection or not. Keeping that aside, that's a welcome one, because then that takes away all the pain to go through not the pain, I would say the process to go through the tax audits and assessment. Make in India, this has been a focus of the government for the last 8 years, and clearly there have been year-on-year steps that have been taken, and the steps could be put in on two fronts. One is a carrot method, and the other is a stick method. The carrot method is by having more PLIs. So 14 sectors, 2 lakh crore rupees of PLI incentives are in the market. And that's therefore incentivizing to do more manufacturing in India. When I use a stick method, I'm just using the generic phrase of carrot and stick, so there's really no thing in it. But customs duty is a disincentive, and it's known worldwide that it is levied to bring in an import substitution and to encourage one to take the plunge to get into manufacturing. Let's staying focused on what we are all here for, which is perhaps the most critical part of our economy on the MSME front. That sector, you may say, Mahesh, this 2 lakh crores of PLI, would we really be getting it as MSME? Perhaps no. But what that does is that it enables and creates an ecosystem of large companies across the sectors, whether it's auto, mobile, textile, we all know the chemicals, solar. Once they come in, I think the footfall of MSMEs then becoming very importantly parts of their ecosystem of manufacturing at a component level and subcomponent level. That's something that is what I find most attractive. And that's what I think the budget continues to do, because I think the budget, the way I see it, it's no longer an event where something's transformationally changed. It is building on a strategy that's already been signed off. And I see the consistency being there. And that's, I think, most critical in taxation and regulatory matters, because every year, if something's going to turn on its head, it keeps us busy to think. But from an implementation perspective in business, it does get challenging. So to me, the biggest takeaway was that it was more stable budget and directionally supporting more Make in India. And I'll come to some more specifics as we proceed, but I just thought I should lay down the lay of the land, so to speak, of what my overall take across those three questions that you had for me.
Excellent. Thank you. In fact, I want to tell attendees that if you have any questions for Mr. Jaising, please feel free to use the Q&A button and ask questions, which I will take up after my own questions have completed. We've got answers to all of them, and then I'll take up questions from the audience. The second thing that we wanted to discuss was we have an impeding slowdown in mature economies like you see the US. Also, that has a global impact in a certain way today. Do you think that is going to affect India also? And do you think Indian micro, small, medium enterprises are ready to weather that storm? And what do you think can be done to further ease the impact of that global,
challenge?
Yeah.
I hear it, and I'm not going to, we all know it is there. It's happening soon. It's happening now in other parts of the world. I think in India, we have a far more resilience. And I would say the resilience actually comes in more from the MSME sector and actual consumption, where and that stability is what I, as a betting guy, would believe that India should continue. I'm using the word continue because right now as well, there are empirical data to say that we're not necessarily significantly impacted, and that's my take, and my hope and belief as well that traction of where we are continues. The reason I'm saying that is a little bit more than wishful thinking, but because of even after the slowdown that's happened in the West and others, there are certain pockets that are actually driving the slowdown, and therefore one needs to see. But what happens in our MSME sector and industry, it's cutting across sectors, and it's not concentrated in one or the other. And it's heavily dependent, I would say, on actual consumption. And those consumption data is showing that continues to be bullish. I do think that one part of MSME, if I move away from the manufacturing part, which is very critical, is on the actual supply chain, on distribution, retail, and others. And I even think e-commerce plays a very critical role. So I do think, I'm not sugarcoating that there are no challenges. There are challenges, particularly where you're doing business in more than one state, How do you do your GST compliances? So I think there is some more journey and some more road to travel together. But let me go into specifics. One, I think that the automation in GST has made life on balance much better. I would use the word on balance because initially it's a bit of a challenge to get used to what the regulation requires. But once you're in, it gets a little bit more stable, and then you also get to know real time your credit claiming ability because of the vendors invoicing and GSTR 2A that the government and 2B the government generates. So a lot has been that automation had teething troubles, but on balance, it's useful. Two, I do think what the government has been doing and continue to do is to look into some of the operational challenges that the sellers on e-commerce, for example, or any seller having multi-state operations should be dealt with. Because the traditional setup that if I'm a popular store and popular, a brand of my own, and I'm based in Bangalore and I want to move to Hosur as well as to the state of Telangana, and I want to have these operations, which just allows me to expand my footprint. The laws today have some requirements to be registered in each state, which is here to stay. That's not what I need a dispensation or we collectively need. It's more about how do you practically get that. Third, a specific call out to the government's change that actually has taken place specific for MSME, where there was, a disparity that if you were an offline seller, you had a threshold of 40 lakhs or a composition exemption of 1.5 crores. The moment you went online, it was down to zero. And that was in a way not enabling a large e-commerce platform to get on and be able to sell. A very important decision was made end of June 2022. It was supposed to be effective Jan 1, but because of technology changes from the government side and industry, the start date is October 1, 2023, whereby any small seller, a kirana shop, artisan, it could be just a homemaker making cakes and whatever, can get onto a platform and start supplying. And I think these small steps may seem, okay, what's the actual quantified benefit on the number of folks impacted vis-a-vis amount of volume of trade that may take place? It may not be a big number on day one, but I think that ecosystem change and regulation is something I'm looking forward to, seeing through. And therefore, number one would be ease of doing business changes that are taking place and monitoring, because we are 5.5 years into GST. A lot of audits assessment happening. I think MSME sector will benefit from the continued clarifications and guidance that the authorities start issuing. Otherwise, it's getting a little onerous on because the authority is also new to the assessment scheme. Two, I do think there's a golden chance where some focus can happen on the working capital ease of and how do we liquidate certain GST credits. We can talk about that as we proceed. Sorry.
In fact, that brings me to the next question, which I had. You see, we have been talking about this one nation, one market, wherein what we were expecting is that there is going to be a simplified tax regime under the GST, which will ease away our troubles in terms of no excise, no octroi, no sales tax. It will be one tax, which will be sufficient for throughout the country. And it will, take away a lot of inaccuracies in reporting and all of that. And today, we still find a certain lack of cohesiveness when it comes to GST for different industries. There's still discussions which are constantly about what is my input, whether that is matching with what my output tax is, or do I have more input and then output is less. There's still a lot of mismatch happening, obviously, because we still have different tax levels across various sectors, which is also, a bit of a problem. How do you feel this entire one nation, one tax, one market can be leveraged by a micro or small enterprise?
Well, it's I can go on for hours, but I'll keep it really short and crisp. But you waited on the dot that one nation, one tax has the proof of the pudding is in the eating. 5.5 years into GST, is it really one nation, one tax? I'll go on a limb to say yes, and I will go on a limb to say that the answer to many of the problems is by embracing technology And I'm not trying to take away some of the operational challenges of the assessment. So let me break it into three. What does one nation, one tax mean more than a punchline and a phrase? The fact is that you hit it on the dot again, entry tax, octroi, CST. So if you were doing an interstate sale, there was a 2% tax, no credit. If you were doing a B2C supply interstate, you were paying tax in the origin state, the destination state was not getting the tax. That wasn't very welcome by those states, so they had special entry tax, for example. What GST does is that if I'm in Kashmir or Kanyakumari, I can sell to you, let's say you're in the state of Madhya Pradesh in Bhopal, and the state of Madhya Pradesh gets the tax because I have done the B2C billing to yourself, and therefore there's a settlement that happens back end. Now, having said that, the challenge that MSME is facing, and I would say industry at large, but MSME slightly more, is the wherewithal to go and do business in multiple states, and the requirements under the GST law that say you need to have a full office, or you need to have people there. That's where I believe, and I understand based on some discussions, that there is a concept and the authorities are looking at revising and looking at, is there a merit to revise whether you need the whole 9 yards in each state. So doing business in multiple states for MSME, to me, that's the challenge, which I think there is some solutions that could happen where they could embrace having your head office in one state and your stock of goods being in other states. That's another part. I think you did raise the point about reconciliations and others. It's either half glass full or half glass empty. But I do see that what happens if you go to an era where you don't have to bite the bullet on a monthly basis to reconcile your input credit vis-a-vis what is the eligible input credit. What happens is 2-3 years later, when you get into the tax audits and you're doing the reconciliation, then you say, hey, that vendor is no longer my vendor. I don't know how to get that reconciliation, or my accountant has quit his job. There's a replacement. The data was on Tally, now it's on some other. But what therefore this does, Vinod, is that it actually has brought in a change that today I can actually work backward. I can claim credit. Only what the government is telling me is my eligible credit under my 2A. And then I will go to my account payable and reconcile that and say, listen, I actually had 100 invoices from vendors. The system says it's 95. Why have these 5 vendors not uploaded? Maybe there's a timing error. Maybe they're just having a bit of delay. Things happen and it's a month late, maybe 2 months late. But if it's beyond that, my systems can then be embraced to say, let's really engage with the vendor or hold back the vendor's payment to figure out what's the real issue. And as per your contractual obligations. So like I said, I would again look at these changes to be a little bit more bite the bullet, look into those changes now and see how it can benefit you. I would look at it from that perspective. I fully recognize the third bucket, which is what I said, which is on the audits and assessment. That is a learning curve both for industry and particularly MSME, as well as the authorities. So I'm not, and therefore, even from their perspective, what may seem like a very onerous checklist. I was in some discussions earlier today where 15 requirements have been asked, and the company I said to the MSME, they said, hey, what's going on? Why? Then I said, now let's break it and put it into buckets, and we were able to make some headway. Last but not the least, I think we did a survey around May 2022 on the 5-year GST anniversary, and much to surprise of many, not to me, that 90% of participants of our survey actually gave it a thumbs up. And that was cutting across large companies, very large companies, large and MSME. So it was not just confined to a very large set of companies as well. There were candid recommendations, but the 2 recommendations that stood out is the technology changes are a little bit, difficult for MSME to catch up with. Not that they were not liking it, but they also hope, and the ask is that they would like to see some more changes around the working capital as well as ease of doing business.
In fact, there's a question here from one of the attendees. It's about compliance tax laws as a major challenge for MSMEs, and the frequent changes in regulations make it very difficult for small entrepreneurs to navigate business. which leads to high compliance burdens. What do you think that the government should do to ease this problem? Well, you will have to speak on behalf of the government, or what do you think the government can do to ease this burden?
No, I sympathize. I think, see, if it's up to 1.5 crores, then you have the composition scheme where the reporting requirements are very low. But I think most of the MSME today is not necessarily the last mile MSME where it's just a kirana shop or a final B2C supplier. If you are in the supply chain, your customer base will expect you to raise a GST invoice. And therefore, you will have to go through the whole 9 yards and the drill, if I were to say, of filing returns, reconciliations. I do sympathize with the pain, and I wish I had a better answer, but let's also understand where the government's coming from, since you said, listen, answer it as though you're part of the government. A valid way. I think the biggest menace in any VAT system in the world is things like a fake invoicing, things like, reporting not happening,
not reporting, yes.
Somebody collecting tax, not paying. So, and I was in a conversation last week with a very senior authority, and I kept saying, look, sir, if it's 150,000 or 1.5 lakh crores of tax per month, are you really saying that for 5%, the rest of the 95 should struggle, or say 2%? He said, and he clarified to me that if you look at it as 2% and say 3,000 crores, what's the big deal from 1,50,000? That's incorrect, because the gross tax, because what gets reported is the net cash collection and net collection. The gross tax is about 10 lakh crores. I mean, I don't have the actual numbers, so correct me. Pardon me if I'm wrong, and I believe I am, but take it as 10, 20% up and down, doesn't matter. So therefore, their elbow room for any error, even a 2% or 5%, is literally massive. So I think that therefore, if you look at it holistically, can they really reduce the compliances? I think that they worry that when done in good faith and good intention, that could thing. But I still believe there's room for 2-3 things. I believe e-invoicing, like I said, is a one-time pain, long-term gain. I'm using pain and gain more from this. But I think where MSME would like to see, and I'm hoping that government says that more, is how do we relax the audits and assessment a bit, as long as having done what I had to do on the output on digital reporting, as well as my input credit being matching, then getting into actual reconciliation is a problem, because the distance number one issue, every company has accounts and an accountant, and investment is done there. But when you do business in multiple states and you get requests to reconcile all states in one go, that's what I'm hoping is a change. So hope number one is a change on how the audits and assessment process is for companies below a particular threshold. And like we do as chartered accountants and auditors, one would look at, shouldn't a sample representation be enough? If something is fishy or incorrect, by all means, get all the data, but trying to get into complete audit and scrutiny is pretty onerous. Request number two, if I were hoping that the change happens sooner than later, is to embrace the virtual place of business concept. As a Mahesh trader sitting in Bangalore, if I have operations, do I really need to I'm not saying I don't need the state registration. That's a sovereign right of the state. It has to be met. But do I really need to have a full-fledged office in 5 states that I have operations? Perhaps not. So I think that's really what I'll be looking for. And it's come out in the 172nd Parliamentary Standing Committee report, where the reporters also acknowledge that there is indeed a merit to relaxing this requirement to have a full-fledged office in each state. So I hope that gives some directional answer to that. I wish I had something more to say.
Absolutely. I think that you gave us a couple of good points there that we can actually take back to the government and, get them to put this in place. You're absolutely right. When we talk to SMEs which have cross-border operations, it is a big issue to have multiple sets of people doing all that compliance. Apart from the fact that, even for these ones that are going now online, and we hopefully in the near future, like you said, October 2023, we will have a much simpler structure for them to not be part of GST or not go into the compliance, but sell still online. That I think is going to be a very, very big
Game
in their.
changer, absolutely. I mean, I'm very excited about that. I've been hoping for it for a year or two and engaged, written some articles about it because I feel for the small sellers who, and we're moving to digital or online, which is one part. A lot of my comments are regardless if you're completely offline or online. But this online part is going to enable them to have a level playing field, enables them to actually supply anywhere within the same state. So please remember that for the MSME sector, as
Yes.
things stand, it has to still be within the same state. But then it doesn't matter because they're at least getting a platform that takes care of going to the reach of, let's say, the state of Uttar Pradesh, a large state. Right, if I'm in the middle, it could go right up to east, west, north, south, and I don't need to go into hunting for the customers. The platform is got the beauty of the power of reach. A customer needs something. There's the logistics and shipping with all the wonderful logistics that we have in the country, which is only getting enhanced every year. And I'm able to go and get my money thanks to UPI and the payment upfront, or the platform collects on my behalf and gives me the money. So if you see that Digital India push, and as well as that's happened, and overall this change could give a pretty large leapfrog jump for our MSME sector to be able to move beyond their customer base and actually get the power of outreach which the platforms provide.
Very correct. Very correct. In fact, we've seen cases where you have a person operating in Nagpur wanting to sell in Mumbai using an online platform and, unable to do so. But, technology can provide him or her that ability to actually sell there. And now with this new thing coming in October, I think it'll be much more easier for people to expand markets sitting in wherever they are, in whichever rural area. And that can be a very, very big stimulant for micro and small enterprises in the country. There's one more question which I think has been asked here, and that is also with regard to, I think, dispute resolution for tax related issues. And, majority of them are primarily for delayed payments, which I think is again talking about the 43B, which will definitely help. So can you please elaborate on that?
True. I think there's a larger aspect around dispute resolution and mechanism. And I feel for industry, especially on the GST front, while a lot of things have done well, I think a couple of challenges. There's today no tax tribunal for meeting on 18th, and I believe that this is going to be hopefully tabled then, because there's been a group of ministers assigned. Because what the participant has rightly so helped is that the process is time consuming and pretty expensive as well. And I also think that the advanced ruling mechanism in GST has not necessarily been the easiest, and it is by authorities, so that probably needs a complete rejig. I wish I had a better answer. I can only say that with tax tribunals now expected to be notified, yes, the floodgates will open of all past appeals. But keeping that aside, I do think that the tribunal should be an answer to expediting some of your disputes. I would look at it from that perspective. Again, not the best what the participant would have hoped for me, but we'll have to live with that.
We have another question here. As a young entrepreneur in the travel and transport business, how can the extension of date for incorporation of business help in terms of carry forward of losses? Now,
I honestly don't have full clarity on that because that's not my super specialized area. But I think that, I believe the 8 year, there's a number of years. So we can go back to the participant. We have a member who has raised this question, and we can definitely go back on that one.
Okay, cool. There's one more, which is from Amol. I'm looking forward to take forward my family-owned agri business. Does the new budget offer fund access for agri entrepreneurs?
So, to my knowledge, I don't think there's a dedicated fund for agri and entrepreneurs as this stands. And also in the agri space, I think while there is a food PLI and others, so there could be some examination because those windows have closed. I would encourage the participant to look out for more announcements from, supporting the manufacturing ecosystem of the agri space. Rumor has it that there will be far more allocation of PLI funds, and I hope has it more than rumor, whether it's on footwear, leather, and others. And I think even agri businesses are also expecting. I will keep a lookout for that from a fund perspective, more on manufacturing rather than a general fund which can be drawn upon. I don't think anything generic would be there.
Also, with regards to agri, I think there are quite a few funds which are already there. You know, NABARD does a lot of startup funding when it comes to agri processing and all that. So I
That's true.
presume there's already enough in the market in terms of agri, funds basically for setting up or scaling up businesses in the agri processing or food processing sector. I think you can make a use of it. Apart from that, for MSMEs, there is the Self-Reliant India Fund, which is already there, and you can you can go into that. That basically can help both at seed as well as angel levels. When you are, and it has no limit whether you can use it only for A sector or B sector. It is across sectors, so it will also apply for agri entrepreneurs. And the fund is quite big. It's got a 10,000 crore base, and which is only the daughter fund. Basically the actual funding that can be made available by all the participants is almost 40,000 crores.
Got it. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that out. I was answering on a new budget perspective, nothing more, but there is lots that's in play. And like I said, budget really is no longer that one event where there are Pandora's box of opportunities that spring up. It is all supplementing a lot of the schemes. So thanks for supplementing and mentioning that. I did see a question, and if you allow me to take that on the export front, I think clearly that's another huge area that we have an interesting comment about a local fish vendor and the export opportunities. Again, the budget per se doesn't bring out something, but I do think that from an export standpoint, whether, and I know I'm digressing a bit, whether there was a talk about AI for India and AI for world, and even from the Make in India perspective, and I know this is a straight question on a local fish vendor, but that also is no longer Make in India for India, but Make in India for rest of world. I think the overall push, and particularly the government is banking on MSME helping that growth, and then therefore correspondingly supporting, is to look at the larger export avenue. And therefore, merchant exporting, things like getting refunds if you're an exporter. And I know for fish, the question again may not be that that's the biggest issue, but from an ecosystem perspective, things have gotten and continue to get far better from an export standpoint. But unfortunately, does the budget offer a specific fund again from an export for fish? I don't believe there is one at this stage, but maybe you want to jump in and clarify the ongoing funds that the participant could examine.
Sure. In fact, Neha, what we have in India, there's already enough schemes available if you want to look at exports. Apart from the fact that you can get funding for setting up the export processing plant, A, B, you can also get funding primarily for work in progress during the entire process of, making the produce export ready, packaging it and all of that. And there is also incentives available when you are after you have exported. So those three are already there. In terms of support for exports, most of the banking channels in India are already able to offer working capital loans, which are very easy to access and are at a lower rate than you can use for India, manufacturing in India and selling in India. So that is also there. Apart from this, there's also key schemes that have been put into place with the specific export promotion councils like the MPEDA, which in your case would be the agency which will basically, you will have to tie up with. You can register with them and get access to more schemes and all that is available for your sector. Because, in India, you have export promotion councils, which are empowered to not only help you set up, package, use standards, but also help you gain access to markets around the world where you can actually sell this produce. And as far as India goes, we are becoming one of the largest exporters for fish, for shrimps, for all of that. And there's a huge market around the world for it. There's one more which says, I'm a new manufacturing startup who is undergoing constant technical changes. How can I benefit from the Unified Skill India platform? Mahesh, would you have an answer for this?
No, I wouldn't. I'm more a budget and a tax specialist, so I do not have an answer. I don't want to wing it,
Guys,
So,
we will need to come back to you with this. But any other questions? Anybody else has any questions? We'll be very happy to take it now. In fact, in the meanwhile, I'd request Mahesh, if you can just tell us about, we all know that presumptive taxation is beneficial in the long run, because then you don't need to go through the pain of having audits and keeping documents for 6 years, 5 years, whatever be the case. How do you feel that MSMEs in India, looking at the world and then the situation in India, the world around, you have presumptive taxation, which is you don't have to keep documents for lots of years. In India, we've just got onto this bandwagon and said, and from 2 crores, now we have made it 3 crores. What do you think is a sizable number, in terms of which we should allow entrepreneurs to actually get into presumptive taxation even at higher levels? Though the government is obliging, I think.
I think 2 parts. I think clearly the 2 to 3 crores is for eligible businesses, but even let's not forget a large part of our professional services businesses like us. That threshold has also moved from 50 lakhs to 75 lakhs. And the only condition is that your cash receipts should not have exceeded 5%. I think more and more with the entire fintech and the financial way of exchanging money is now the settlement happening more on the banking channel, which is good. That's something that we need to look at. I think, and therefore, what should the optimal threshold be? I mean, I guess the jury's out there whether 3 crores should be 5 and 75 lakhs should be 1 crore. I wouldn't take a stab at putting my, a finger on one particular number. But I do think that, this coupled with the automation that the government has done, and speaking for many of people who I know, getting your own tax refund right now is far more quicker than what we would get. And that year on year, we've seen that. So I do think, a presumptive tax is good. Even on a normal taxation, it's not necessary that every matter has to go into a full-blown audit. And therefore, I see that journey is getting less onerous, and the data analytics is helping the government to go after specific large players or even medium and small players, but where they have some data or they see certain analytics. So I would say stay confident that it's in the government's interest also to not necessarily, find out one small error or the other. And that's why a presumptive tax is not saying look the other way on the taxation at all, but at the same time, not necessarily spending and going in an ABC analysis like we would do on a business. And not necessarily opening the floodgates. So it's a balancing act. I would say take on the presumptive tax if it makes sense for you. And also from the other side, you yourself would see how much are you going through and how onerous is it. I'm going on a limb to say things have got less onerous, but it's unfair for me to speak on behalf of all our attendees today.
Very correct. Very correct. In fact, you very aptly, described most of the things. Overall, when you look at, on one hand, we're talking about budgets may not have the same teeth that they used to have, because, over the year around, we used not to have any announcements, but it was only at the budget level that we used to have them. But now that has changed. You have announcements every month or every alternate month. So now I think the overall focus on the budget so actually has reduced to a greater extent, but still looking at this budget and what the government presented with a huge focus on infrastructure. Overall, how do you feel MSMEs need to look up to what is going to happen in the next 1 year?
I think I'm glad you brought that up, because I missed a very material point where I know, and I think if you really were to ask an MSME, and we all of them have been very participative and interactive, so thanks for that. What's your number one issue from a income tax? I would imagine, of course, whatever we've dealt with, but the other is income tax withholding tax, TDS. as a compliance, TDS as getting money that's blocked. I believe that the government is re-looking at some of the areas and seeing what could be done a little differently. And I don't think the bus has gone on this budget and the next bus is next budget. It's been shown that policy reforms and clarifications announcements are ongoing. So I would look forward as MSME for some changes around and announcements around withholding tax, which will only be better than where we are right now. GST is a constant. I have 6 budgets a year as a professional because we have to analyze it 6 times, which is great. And clarifications that come in through the journey. So it's not you land up missing out much. But I do believe whether the change on October 123, the implementation part also has been in some sense explained in the law and it's been discussed with us as industry. I believe the government has come out with something very less onerous. All that a small seller has to do is just get perhaps a registration and a unique number and you're good to go. And the platform will report your sales. So proof of the pudding in the eating. I hope October date stays on track and MSME sellers can start doing that. Third, I think that's a little bit more long haul. I don't know if the next 1 year is the time frame. Maybe it's a little longer, but certain more changes around the registration front, as well as on the actual assessment and audit. I would think that that's something which may be a slightly longer journey than 1 year, but in the short to medium term, keep a lookout for some announcements and changes there. That will significantly help you and your business.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mahesh. We are all grateful to Mr. Mahesh Jaising for spending time with us. Though it was short and sweet, but it was, to the point and very, very effective. I think most of the people that wanted a clear analysis of exactly what to expect in this budget have got it. And we will look forward to having you again with us very, very soon. Mahesh,
it's a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me over. The very important sector close to the heart for all of us. And thanks for the great work from our forum. We should continue to take our issues back to the government like we have. And because the government's also very eager to get specifics. And on that note, thank you and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. So attendees, there you are hearing it from the top man who understands this more than any of us. So with this, we've come to the end of the budget Vishleshan or analysis that we call it. And we will now start working on the remaining things that are still pending with the government in terms of our asks and our requests. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon in another session. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.